The light came on. I guess that's a good sign. Good morning. I see it's 9:17 by the clock on the wall. Today is July 27th, 2023. And this location is the County Board Room in the St. Croix County Government Center in Hudson, Wisconsin. As far as I know, the publication for this meeting indicated this time and place for the monthly meeting of the St. Croix County Board of Adjustment. So with that, I'm calling this meeting to order and asking the members of the board and the members of the community development staff to identify themselves through their microphones as the start of making a record of today's meeting. My name is Buck Malick, and I'm a resident of the town of Hudson. We're each required to be a resident of a different town, so there are no two of us from a given town. So I'm from Hudson, and I'm a citizen member and currently the chair of the Board of Adjustment. Mr. Peterson?
Dave Peterson, citizen member, town of Kinnickinnick.
Joe Miller, citizen member, town of Hammond.
Greg Taljohn, District 14's County Board Supervisor, representing Aaron Prairie, a little bit of Warren, and Richmond Township.
Heather Amos, Corporation Counsel.
Mike Wozniak, Land Use Administrator.
Ellen Denzer, Community Development Director.
Mike Wozniak, Land Use Administrator. There.
Mike and Julie Peterson of the department is making the record today. We have minutes from our meeting of Thursday, June 22. Unless a board member has edits for those minutes, they will be deemed approved as they were provided to us. Are there any edits, board members? No. Okay, we'll deem them approved. Today we have one hearing, and then we have some proposed revisions to our own bylaws. We'll proceed with the hearing. Mr. Wozniak, I take it you're making the presentation on behalf of the staff?
Yes, and I'll get started with that here. Just get to the right place in the on the screen here. You have on your agenda today a conditional use permit request from Gary Zappa. This in the town for property located in the town of Hudson. As legally noted on this slide, I'll note that the property is located in the lower St. Croix Riverway Overlay District, and you're considering today two conditional use permit requests that apply to the request to construct a home and driveway, and basically the stormwater grading and filling requirements associated with the project. As is customary, we've included a copy of the staff report, the conditional use permit application, including site plan and application materials with the Board of Adjustment packet. I'll note that the parcel in question, and this is a property that is located along the St. Croix River, rather unique in that it accesses through the Eckerd Bluffs Park property. The parcel is 6.9 acres in size. A portion of the site has slopes over 25% grade, as indicated in the purple on this slide. And roughly the project area is circled in the yellow on this particular slide. We've noted in the staff report that the site is mostly wooded with deciduous trees. Steep slopes are located along the south and west property lines that drain toward the St. Croix River. The proposed improvements with this project involve filling and grading work for the structure and driveway that would exceed 10,000 square feet of area. And some of the filling and grading will occur within 40 feet of the bluff line. It's a limited amount of grading in that area, but that's a trigger for one of the conditional use permit requirements. The proposal is to construct a single-family home driveway and a sanitary system as well at Pouts. The setbacks are shown in let's see on this slide. Actually, it's shown on this. I believe is the bluff line is shown on red on this slide, and the applicant and noted in blue text, I should say, are setbacks from the top of bluff. The applicant also, I would note, has submitted a land use permit application for the proposed structures, which is a requirement as well. As the board is aware, land use permits are reviewed and handled administratively by our community development staff. And again, on this slide, you can see a driveway would enter the property from the north from an easement that serves another residence to the north and comes through what is now the Eckerd Bluffs Park property. The driveway would require some grading, some stormwater-related improvements, and then the grading and what's involved for the area to construct the dwelling and the sanitary system. Just a little detail here on proposed stormwater improvements. I'd note downspouts and or swales are noted on the plans. All roof downspouts on the west side of the structure will be piped below grade to the east to follow existing and proposed surface drainage. Riprap is suggested at daylight end of pipe to reduce potential for erosion. Some of those details we typically firm up through the land use permit, but what I would say is our staff is satisfied with the stormwater plans that have been included with the CUP application. I note also information has been provided with the application regarding erosion and sediment control measures. In this case, an erosion and sediment control plan. And this would include addition of silt fence along the south side of the property outside of the slope preservation zone shown in red on this slide. All disturbed areas to be treated with erosion control mat, class 1 type B erosion control mat, and 70% vegetative cover shall be reestablished in disturbed areas prior to temporary control structures being removed. And this slide basically includes the visual impact analysis that we require on these riverway projects. And as is evident from this slide, both from the ordinary high water mark as well as the 250 feet out into the river, the proposed structure would not be visually conspicuous. So I think in this case, this one's pretty straightforward. And there are trees on the property as well, but this this analysis doesn't take into account the trees. We haven't received any comments from the town on this, and the DNR, we haven't received formal comment on this, but we did have a meeting, a phone conference call with Mike Wentholz, and Mike appeared to be pretty comfortable with this layout and didn't see any major issues. Essentially, he thought it was being handled as logically and as well to build on this site. And this site does have more to work with in terms of ground to build on or to provide the access than a lot of the Riverway sites, which many of which are very constrained in terms of dimensions or topography. And this one certainly has more to work with than quite a few of them that we deal with here. I won't read through the criteria you use for evaluating conditional use permits because you've seen this many times. I would note that your options are to approve the request, to deny the request, or to table and postpone and ask for additional information. Staff have included draft findings of fact and conclusion of law in this report, and I won't reiterate the descriptive material that we've included in the findings as we typically do. And I would note that as I had referenced, the land use permit application has been submitted and is under review. And of course, it's subject to these actions today being approved by the Board of Adjustment. The project is subject to the filling and grading standards and stormwater and erosion control standards in the Riverway ordinance, and staff does believe that the plans as submitted would meet those requirements. And again, the filling and grading is allowed by conditional use permit. And in this case, there's both filling and grading of at least 10,000 square feet outside of the slope preservation zone. Then there's some grading within 40 feet of the bluff, and that's the other trigger for conditional use permit that you're considering today. Since there's a lot of detail in these findings, and I'm sure you've read them, I won't read through it all, but staff are available to answer any questions you may have. Essentially, we're, I think, in some depth indicating that we believe that the applicable standards are being complied with this request. I will get down to the more specifically the criteria you use to consider these conditional use permits, and specifically call out that you're not supposed to grant a conditional use permit that would violate the spirit or general intent of the chapter. It's the view of staff on this one that filling and grading is allowed by conditional use permit in the slope preservation area, and therefore does not violate the spirit and intent of the ordinance. The intent is to construct a single-family dwelling, pouts, and a driveway, which again would be also regulated through a land use permit. And I'd note under the second criteria, no conditional use shall be allowed which would be contrary to public health, safety, or general welfare, or which would substantially be adverse to property values in the neighborhood. The permit approval would not be contrary. It's the view of staff to public health safety, so long as the proposed stormwater and erosion control measures and standards are followed. And that would be dictated through both these conditional use permits as well as the land use permit. In terms of any nuisance issues that this request may result in, it's, again, the view of staff, results of the proposed project, the grading and filling and single-family home pouts and driveway construction would not constitute a nuisance. And in terms of complying with standards of the ordinance, again, it's the view of staff that all standards in the Riverway and Shoreline Overlay districts would be met with this project as proposed. Staff has recommended, based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law included in the staff report, approval of the following conditional use permits: filling and grading within 40 feet of a slope preservation zone pursuant to section 17.36 F3A5, and filling and grading 10,000 square feet or more outside of the slope preservation zone pursuant to 17.36 F3A6. And we are recommending this subject to, just get down here, 10 conditions as included in the staff report. And I would call out that among these conditions that the applicant shall have 1 year from the date of approval of this conditional use permit to begin construction and 2 years to complete the project and complete the final inspection with the department. And they're subject to obtaining a building permit or any other permits or requirements to meet any other local, county, state, or federal permits. Should the work associated with the building permit not be completed and inspected prior to the permit expiring, then this approval may be revoked. At that, the other conditions tend to be our standard conditions that are included with most conditional use permits. I can answer any questions if you have any about them. And I'll note that the applicant is present with us today, and if he wishes to expand on my overview, you could certainly hear what Mr. Zappa has to say about his project, or I'm sure he's available to answer any questions that he may better answer than staff.
Thank you, Mr. Wozniak. People who are present today and think they might wish to speak in a few moments from now, please sign in on the paper that's on that credenza to your left so that we can dispense with individual sworn testimony. Board members, do you have any questions to ask Mr. Wozniak?
Yeah, I got a couple.
Go ahead, Joe.
Okay, Mike, I didn't see anything talked about the width of the driveway.
Yeah, our plans are to scale, and I believe that would be, we could determine it. Mr. Zappa or Reed Junko worked on this report on our staff. Mr. Zappa, could you go up to the mic and clarify that?
Gary Zappa, associated with Zappa Brothers, Inc. We're proposing a 12-foot wide driveway for the majority of the driveway, and then it'll widen out for the entry of the proposed structure garage.
Okay, good. And the other question I got, in one of the comments Mike made, he talked about the drain pipes going below grade. Any idea what the soil horizons are below the organic level? Or is it...
Yeah, yes, I do. Yeah, if you look at the soil evaluation, which you should have, it'll show most of that soil is kind of a silty till type loam sand. So it's
Okay.
pretty good soil.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
Any other board members have a question?
Looked pretty like a lot of trees there. Are they gonna lose a lot of trees in this?
You know, actually, a lot of the trees are already dead, but not really, but we will lose some, yes.
Okay.
I had a question for you, Mr. Wozniak, and whoever worked on this from a community development staff standpoint. Are you satisfied that the request is for the minimum disturbance to provide an appropriate driveway to serve fire vehicles and things like that, and to control erosion, and does not include disturbance that is at the whim of the owner or for merely aesthetic purposes?
Yes, in the plans, Mr. Zappa has that meandering of the driveway is to try to best work with the topography to minimize the extent of the grading for the driveway, and staff have taken a hard look at that, and I think we feel that's getting it about as right as you can get it on that site.
Excellent. Any other questions, board members, for the staff? No. Okay, we come to the stage of the proceedings where we ask for the applicant and those who support the applicant's position if there's anything they'd like to say. And you're at the podium, Mr. Zappa. Is there anything else you want to say, or do you?
Only if anyone has any more questions.
No, it doesn't appear so.
Thank you.
Stand by. Anybody else who wants to speak in favor of the application? Okay. Give us your name and address, please.
I wouldn't exactly say, I'm Dan Butler, by the way. I'm a legal shareholder in the River Heights Trail Association, which Mr. Zappa is not. The county had no authority to grant him use of the River Heights Trail, which was a private road, privately paid for. We paid for the purchase of the road, we paid for the tarring of the road, we paid for the crack sealing and so forth of the road. And to my knowledge, Mr. Zappa has paid for nothing, and certainly nothing to us. What really happened here with this squirrely deal between the county and Mr. Zappa is that the county stole value from us and transferred it for value to Mr. Zappa. This deal is going to have to be reviewed by the courts, and until there's a final judgment from the courts, he really does not have legal access to that property. And we certainly don't want a bunch of heavy construction trucks. That road will not take that kind of weight. We've already collected $10,000 from Waste Management years past for the damage they did with their big garbage trucks, the result of which they not only paid the money, they switched to lighter trucks, thank you. Now the jury's still out on this new company that we have. So far, so good. No complaints. But River Heights Trail Association, which the county became a signatory to by virtue of taking over the Eckert share, requires that prior notice be given to the River Heights Trail Association share members, of which there are 6, not 7, 6. And no notice was given to us. In fact, I first found out about this when I read about it in the Hudson paper. And my first thought was, what kind of a squirrely deal is this? You know, what happened to our notice? What happened to our right to be heard here about our concerns? Well, obviously the county didn't care. Getting back to this specifically, this situation, I would guess that the one most potentially adversely affected would be Mr. Capeter, because they're adjoining property owners. I know that when I applied for my conditional use variance, the DNR showed up very angrily and told my board that Mr. Butler should not be entitled to a permit because he's been cutting trees down on his lot. I said, well, I've cut down the dead trees. I said, I've done a very good job of maintaining my green screen because I want my house screened. And the DNR representative at that time stepped up to me, shook his finger in my face and said, you can't cut any trees down in the Riverway district. He's not even a dead tree. And that pissed me off so badly. I shook my finger in his face and I said, oh yeah? I says, is the DNR the one of those trees? No. Well, I do. And the board members got a big laugh out of that. And I got my permit. But, you know, here, squirrely, this deal's squirrely. 10,000 feet or more. Well, Mr. Zappa can drive a truck through or more. Is it 11,000? Is it 15,000? 20,000? Get that or more out of there. It doesn't belong in that. He's asking for 10,000 feet. Give him 10,000 feet then, not or more. That's crazy. That's a potential invitation to legal abuse. You know, I can think of a lot worse neighbors to have than Gary Zappa. I have great admiration for the guy. He's the hardest working man I know to this day. But that doesn't give him the right to be the benefited party of value stolen from the rest of us back there. Two of my neighbors are so upset about this park, this grandiose park idea, that they're preparing to sell and move. And I'm not going to be driven off. I'll fight. And Bill will fight. This is not right. We were entitled to fair value for the share that was taken. Now, if the county wants to admit that it transferred its Eckert share to Mr. Zappa, fine, we'll take Mr. Zappa. You keep all the other public trespassers out of there. We've already got problems with those people back there, and it hasn't even begun to be functional as a park yet. It's just the hunters and the partiers and the pot smokers and so forth. Some people even come back there to throw their dirty diapers out. I've seen that on the alongside the road. So that's my position. I don't believe Mr. Zappa has clear title to river access or to his property across River Heights Trail. At one point, I told Mr. Zappa when he wanted permission to come in there, I told him, well, I'll tell you what, Gary, we all paid for that road. I said, if you want to pave off Old 35 for us from the south end to the mailboxes, I said, that'd probably be about fair at this point. Well, I'm not going to do that. Stay out then. But the county saw fit to steal the value from us and give it to Gary. That's not right. And interestingly enough, the county could not engage in eminent domain to transfer value to Gary Zappa because eminent domain is not allowed for private or commercial use, only for government necessary purposes. There was nothing necessary about this squirrely deal. So, you know, like I said, we've already put down $10,000 for a retainer to Baki Norman in preparation to sue for whatever we need to sue for when the county drops the other foot, drops the other shoe on this grandiose park plan here that Ellen Denzer has. I understand only supposed to cost $17 million. And, oh, we're going to get disc golf. Oh, thank you very much. Disc golf is long passe, and the only thing that people really care about now is pickleball. So, you know, don't make another mistake here. Strike the words or more, and then after that, it's between you and Mr. Zappa and the other regulatory authorities that probably are not going to appear because they haven't. I guess things have changed since I applied for mine back in '91. But this is a squirrely deal just like the original transaction was. And I don't like it. It stinks legally like rotten fish. Thank you.
I saw in the file that a neighbor, Peter, was within the 300-foot distance. Was notice given to that property owner in the manner prescribed by our ordinance?
We met I believe we met our distance requirements, and I think I probably have a list here in the file. Potentially Julie could pull
While
it
you're
up.
doing that, Ms. Denzer, you could probably address this question.
Chair Malik, package page 37 is the list of the adjoining landowners. And Mr.
That's where I saw it. Mike, did your office
Thank you, Heather.
actually send notices to the people on that list?
Yes.
All right. My recollection from past cases is that this board does not have the ability to affect anybody's access rights, and we therefore make our decisions in a manner that does not reflect right or wrong with regard to access disputes. Is that a correct recollection?
Yes, that's correct. Chairman
The
Malik?
other question I wanted to ask was, when you state that the permit is for more than 10,000 square feet, my understanding, which I want you to correct if it's not right, but my understanding is that a permit is required if a disturbance will exceed 10,000 square feet, but that the amount of disturbance that we authorize by our decision is only that shown on the approved print, no more than that. Am I correct?
You are correct. That standard is the filling and grading is subject to the conditional use permit if it's 10,000 square feet or more. But Mr. Zappa is limited to the extent of grading that he proposed on his plans, assuming the board approves that as part of his request.
And that's your recommendation as a staff to us, to do it that way. How will you make sure that that is not exceeded in reality if this board does approve it?
Our process, as I mentioned, includes also an administrative land use permit, and we hold a pre-construction meeting. We require that the areas to be worked are staked and identified, and that erosion and sediment control measures be put in place that are called out on the plan as part of the construction. And then we generally do a mid-project inspection and then a final inspection. So we are visiting the site, our staff, to make sure that the work that was proposed is what was performed, and that the extent of the site disturbed is consistent with the plans.
Any questions, board members? No. Does anybody else in the room want to speak about this application? If not, I'll be closing the hearing, and we would, after that point, not be taking any more papers or testimony or other forms of evidence to be included in our decision-making process. Anybody else want to speak, or anybody want to speak again? All right, the clock shows 9:50, and I am therefore declaring that the hearing is closed. This being the only matter that pertains to actual individual permits today, and we will not be doing a site visit. Members have had the opportunity to visit the site ever since they received notice of the hearing. So we could proceed to a decision if board members wish to do that. If we aren't going to decide today, then we would need to articulate exactly why, what information we need, or what we would be waiting for before we would make a decision. Board members, have you got preferences here? I don't. I mean, we've had questions raised in regard to access, which is outside of our jurisdiction. We've had question raised about exchange of money relating to that access, which is outside of our jurisdiction. We've raised questions ourselves and had testimony regarding the extent of the ground disturbance that would be approved if we approve this. But I don't have on my list any other issues that I would be putting in to modify the staff's recommendation to us. So if nobody else would be doing it, I would be making a motion. Does anybody want to?
I'll move to approve the conditional use permit as presented by staff.
I'll second it.
Okay, the motion is by Peterson and the second is by Miller. Is there further discussion or debate about whether to adopt the staff recommendation as our decision? Any discussion or debate desired, members? No? I'll call for the vote then. All in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All opposed, vote nay. The vote is unanimous to adopt the recommendation of the community development staff. So I will sign an appropriate document when it is presented to me. Thank you for appearing. Thank you for the contrary testimony. We hear you. Unfortunately or not, it's not within our jurisdiction to make those decisions. If it matters to you, you've made a record. You could request a transcript at your expense if you wanted to use it some other place. But on the other hand, of course, you can always give the same testimony in any other forum that you deem appropriate. That concludes this matter. We have this one matter now of our rules and a proposed adjustment to our rules. Okay, I had some thoughts that I wanted to get before us. I thought that the proposed rules, which you all had a chance to study, was a very good job. It was useful to me to read through them all again, which I don't do as often as I should, but to get that fresh in mind. But it did seem to me that we ought to be sure that we addressed, if we possibly could, how we go about notifying somebody that we are considering revoking their permit. I think that was a factor. Well, it certainly came up in our hearing here on a particular matter that we dealt with a few months ago. The person claimed that they had a very hard time getting a meeting with community development staff, and they wanted to put all the burden for making a meeting happen upon the community development staff. And I guess when it got to the judge, in that case, he kind of wanted to put the burden on the community development staff too. So maybe if we had some sort of standards there, or we referenced another process, we could say, well, here's what it said we're supposed to do, and here's what we did, and put an end to that. What did you think, Heather?
I agree, and I think on the new Article 9, Section 3, where it says revocation request, and the Board of Adjustment may entertain a request for revocation, and then there's additional information, I think it's probably best to add another paragraph there indicating that, you know, the individual that is subject to the revocation request shall receive notice by either certified mail or personal service of the request for the revocation. So that way the person we have proof that they were notified of the request. So
You're on packet page 97, I bet.
I am, yes.
At the top.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
yes.
For board members who are trying to follow along, would you make it, you might wish to, we might wish to make it so that personal service doesn't have to be through the sheriff. If Mike, for instance, is able to have a meeting with somebody and he could hand them a piece of paper and then execute an affidavit when he gets back to the office, similar to what a sheriff's deputy would do when they do personal service. That might, because many times, at least a decade ago when I was actively suing people and stuff like that, sometimes getting the sheriff out there took time. And particularly if a party was kind of dodging service, shall we say, for want of a better term, the sheriff's deputy would make 3 visits or something like that at 1 week intervals, and here's gone 3 weeks, you know, and you haven't done it yet. And meanwhile, in our context here, we need to publish, we need to stick to a schedule. So maybe the return receipt mail and the personal service by a staff member with an affidavit of service and/or sheriff's deputy. And the sheriff's deputy, I often found had a salutary effect because it kind of demonstrated to the other side that this was serious business. They needed to take it seriously. Do you like all those ideas?
Yes. So I think we could include all three of those options and just say, personal service by law enforcement, certified mail, or service by a staff member accompanied by an affidavit of service. And so then whatever the three options work, if some staff member has, like you said, met with the individual, and that would be the easiest, we could do it that way. But then it gives all three options, so there's still proof all three ways. Either proof of service by the law enforcement, certified mail with the return receipt, or an affidavit by the staff member.
Does that seem workable to you, Mike?
I think so. I mean, the point is, we want the permit holder, the landowner permit holder, to be aware of the action being considered and why it's being brought to the board. So, whatever options we have to best accomplish that, I'm supportive of.
Okay. Another point that I had was, I wondered if we could tighten up at all what it means, what the effect of a revocation is. And I forgot where that appears in here. Oh, yeah, there it is. It's on the bottom of the same page, packet page 97. The effect, it's under section 6, decision for revocation. The effect of an affirmative decision to revoke a conditional use permit shall cause, blah, 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 shall cause all operations to cease. And then the next paragraph down, that one deals with conditional uses, the next one deals with variances. The effect of an affirmative decision to revoke a variance shall include authorization to take, no, it doesn't apply. It really is only that first one that I read. What does it mean to cause all operations to cease? And I guess I had some suggestions, maybe denial of entrance by the public, or denial or the cessation of charging the public for services rendered on the premises. So, you intercept the income flow of the person who's been found to be doing something they're not supposed to, in our opinion. Did you have any other thoughts about that, Ellen or Heather or Mike? What does it mean to cause all operations to cease? We don't mean that it means animals who are on the property have to die. But do we mean that water pumps have to be turned off? No, I don't think we mean that.
One thing to consider here, Mr. Chair, is that and board members, the conditional use permit authorizes construction of certain improvements often, and also authorizes operation of the use. And so I think that for certain conditional use permits, there may be a need in the action, the revocation action, if, as you say, some of the improvements have to be modified because there's a risk to the public health, safety, and welfare, say. If they're not, then those sorts of things would probably have to be spelled out in the revocation action.
Oh, that'd be a good way to tailor it to the specific situation. When we hold that hearing and make that decision, then it would be up to the board to specify what has to stop. Because sometimes it would be things that have been mentioned in the permit, but in other cases, people have gone beyond the terms of their permit and they're into a new operation that never was authorized.
Which is exactly might be the reason for revocation, is they've exceeded. And so then instead of saying just cease all operations permitted by the permit, it would say something more. And
Yeah.
the board should identify that and have that in the instructions.
So we might, for instance, the paragraph immediately above that, can only take action to grant revocation or deny revocation. No conditions may be modified. And we might there say something about the board's order shall specify what activities must cease, something like that?
That's almost exactly what I wrote. The Board of
Oh.
Adjustment shall specify in the decision all items that need to cease. So,
Items or activities?
or activities, items or.
Just to make it a little broader.
Hey, great minds.
You should have been an attorney. Oh, you.
Yeah,
Just as an example, if a use had a pout system and the use was going to cease and it was not going to be maintained, does it have to be properly closed and
well,
to-
then
in-
maybe better say, so activities to cease and activities or maintenance to be, maintained, but,
You could just use the term and proper, and if necessary, properly closed. Because, for instance, properly abandon a well, properly close a non-metallic mining operation, properly close a pout system, those kind of things. If someone's permits were revoked because they refused to put in a new sanitary and it was leaking onto the ground or going into a stream, you could have properly closed or properly abandoned or properly, that way, the whole properly, we use that already because there are certain standards that have to be met, usually under DNR, for like the three things I listed. So something about properly closed or abandoned could cover it. And we also, for instance, when we had back when, where some bankruptcies meant that a contractor walked away from an open site, we used the word that we said in those decisions that it had to be properly stabilized, closed, abandoned, or stabilized as appropriate.
okay.
Heather's typing rapidly here.
I'm trying to get it all down because I wrote all over my piece of paper.
Are we gonna have the comfortable position of being able to wait till next month to adopt this, or are we gonna have another something in front of us next month that's gonna?
Well, it probably would be
Required.
possible for us to even, you haven't made that many changes. We could try wordsmithing it right now, or you could
I
approve
prefer that.
contingent.
If you
You'd like
think we
to do that? Okay.
How about you? I mean, we could take recess and deny the staff the recess, and they can keep working.
You're going to have a very busy agenda next month.
Yes, it'd probably be better to just, you have a very light agenda today, and another half hour probably would get it done.
And then, I had another thought.
He was on a roll.
I know it. I woke up early, yeah. And that affects packet page 89. Near the bottom, under section 3. Ever since that was developed back whenever these rules were last modified in a significant way, I've been uncomfortable with that language that says, it's the first paragraph under section 3, conduct of members and support staff. Packet page 89. Members of the Board of Adjustment shall not discuss with anyone, including other members of the Board of Adjustment and Community Development staff, matters to come before or that are before the board outside of formal Board of Adjustment proceedings, period. So that means actually that person who calls me at home and says, I wish you would do so-and-so about this case that's gonna come up next week, has already caused me, I don't know, what do I do? I mean, we've all dealt with that. We all, as quickly as we can, as we say, please don't tell me anymore. I don't want to have to recuse myself. I want to be available to help make the right decision on your application. And if you keep talking to me, there's a potential for bias here. But technically, that response might be considered discuss, and all of us are tactful, and we don't like to be that abrupt and so on. So there's that. Plus, there are always, in my opinion, appropriate discussions that are factual. In other words, you know, you meet Mike at the grocery store and he says, we're going to have a long meeting next month. And you say, oh yeah, why is that? And he says, well, we've got one that's a Riverway one. We've got another one that's got a petition from 45 homeowners. And you say, oh, well, gee, I wish it wasn't 45 homeowners. Hopefully only 2 of them will show up. Have you had a discussion now? Are you? Here's what I would prefer to put in there. You see where it says in the first line, shall not. Between not, right there, I would strike out the words discuss with, and I'd insert this long phrase. So it would read, members of the Board of Adjustment shall not attempt to influence, nor allow themselves to be influenced by, and then pick up with the word anyone, including other members of the Board of Adjustment and Community Development staff, regarding, and that's a new word, regarding matters to come before or that are before. Let me read it again so you can, knowing where we're going, you can home in on the specifics. Members of the Board of Adjustment shall not attempt to influence nor allow themselves to be influenced by anyone, including other members of the Board of Adjustment and Community Development staff, regarding matters to come before or that are before the board outside of formal Board of Adjustment proceedings.
Got it.
It's an awfully long and ugly sentence, I know that, but
That goes to, we had the county board meeting regarding
similar topics.
similar topic. I abstained from voting because I felt it could be a conflict of interest if I'm on this board also. So I just didn't vote one way or the other.
Yeah.
But I was privy to the conversation.
So with that, you wouldn't have had a discussion, assuming that you withdrew or before you didn't say anything.
Right.
You listened, of
Right.
course. Would my new language about not attempting to influence
Well, I mean,
nor
that does-
allowing yourself to be
Yeah,
influenced?
that would solve.
Would that address it?
I would think so. I would just want to give that example.
Good example. And that, that Joe encounters that from time to time, at the town level, with
Yeah.
matters that are in his town. Well, I guess, yeah, any one of us, and many of us have been on town boards, or planning commissions. Would that be better?
I think that would be better. And
Could you make it even better some other way?
no, I like your wording. I already have it typed down, and I think that does. I probably will add some commas where there should be commas. Like or that are before the board. That should probably be a comma phrase that's set out. But otherwise, yes, I wrote down your language, and I think that does help. It addresses Supervisor Telejohn's issues, and like you said, also, if you're hearing stuff from being a town board member, I think that will address that also. That you're not. The term discuss is very vague, and so having shall not attempt to influence, I think, is better language.
So I think it is possible to listen to something without being influenced by it, although there's a kind of a philosophical problem about that. Whenever you take in information, how can it not have some influence? But I'm hoping to provide just a little more latitude there. Otherwise, I think without meaning to, we're falling into trouble all the time, and somebody's gonna trip us up with it. Yes, Ellen?
So just logistically, I would suggest that we have Julie open the Word version of what we have on the screen, Microsoft Word, and then Heather and I just go to the podium, type in the edits that she's been scribbling down, and then as you guys take a short break, and then you would have it in the system on the screen for all of your 4 members to look at, and then you could, with these additional changes from Mr. Malik, then you would be able to vote on it. Would that work?
Work for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good with that.
Pretty efficient.
If I have to,
We get our break.
Okay.
but I can change. I'm a man.
All right. So if you recess us, we'll get that done for you.
So we're probably back in business, are we? Okay, it's 10:42. We had a lot longer break than was originally intended, but I believe that the CDC staff and Corporation Counsel Amos have been hard at work and now have some proposed changes to the draft that they gave us, and we'll ask somebody to read it into the record, and we'll look at it on the screen and see whether it suits our needs.
I can do that. So the first section is in Article 4, make sure that's right, Article 4, Section 3, Conduct of Members and Support Staff. And so we just changed that to say, members of the Board of Adjustment shall not attempt to influence nor allow themselves to be influenced by anyone, including other members of the Board of Adjustment and/or Community Development Department staff regarding matters to come before or that are before the board outside of formal Board of Adjustment proceedings.
Yeah.
That's the first change. We did throughout the document modify the date to reflect today's date that these revisions are being addressed by the Board of Adjustment. And then the other changes are in the new Article 9 under revocation. So the first change is in Section 3. We added that an affected permit holder, property owner, or their heirs or assigns shall be provided notice of the request for revocation. The notice shall be by any of the following methods: personal service by law enforcement, certified mail with return receipt requested, service by staff member with a completed affidavit of service, posted on the premises for a reasonable time period, or publication in the official county newspaper. So we put all 5 options, and it could be 2 of these options that we use: posted on the premises and certified mail, or we can use any of the methods, but at least one of them has to be used.
Okay, Buck, the only question I got is, does the county have anybody that just serves these things as a part-time gig?
We have a process server in the sheriff's office, so whenever the Corporation Counsel office needs something served, or let's say community development hasn't had success, like actually getting someone to respond to a letter, we ask the sheriff's office to do the service, and then they submit their certificate of service to us. So there's just one gentleman in the sheriff's office, that's what he does every day. He goes and serves paperwork, not just for our office or community development, but anything the court needs, restraining orders. And they do pretty quick. I just asked for something to be served, I think, on Monday, and it was served by Tuesday.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so he falls under the Office of Law Enforcement then?
Correct.
Okay, all right, good, thanks.
Sorry, but I do have two things. Number 2, the one by mail, don't you think we ought to put in to last known address? Because sometimes that comes up, oh, well, you should have known that I was actually at so-and-so address because the health department issued me a permit, and it showed I live in St. Paul, whatever.
Yep.
So maybe in other words, that would put on us or on the department the duty to thrash around a little bit and make sure you're using the last known address. But if you're referring to this as your template for what work needs to be done, you have a reminder right here to do that. And the other thing is certified mail the return receipt method that's now used? There were, last time I was involved in this, and it's years, but there were a couple of different ways of doing return receipt mail. Certified mail wasn't the only one.
Sometimes our office will not do the return receipt because then the individual receiving it, we know they won't sign for it. And so then we just do the certified mail, and then you can track it on the USPS website, and we know when it's delivered. That way we don't have to, sometimes the property owners just refuse to sign for it. So we could put
certified or return receipt mail, or something like that. I don't want to be a nitpicker here, but I also do want to help us avoid future problems.
We could put that certified mail with optional return receipt requested. So that way we can still do the certified mail, and then we can pick and choose whether to do return receipt requested if that kind of addresses that issue.
Thank you. You all comfortable with it? Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to copy this because I have this in another area. So, okay. The other changes, under section 6, decision for revocation, we added, the Board of Adjustment shall specify in their written decision all items or activities that are required to be seized, closed, abandoned, or stabilized, and any maintenance that shall be completed. So I think that addresses all the possible things that we may need to have ordered in the decision, and this also then indicates that the decision shall be written.
Thank you.
We also added that a copy of the written decision shall be provided to the permit holder, property owner, or their heirs and assigns by the same methods as set forth in Article 9, Section 3, which is the section we were just fixing.
Good.
We added the language property owner or their heirs or assigns, just in case the property owner is deceased that initially obtained the permit or the variance. Because if there's, if they're deceased and someone else now owns the property, we wanted to be able to provide that notice to the heir.
Or there's been a company and it's been sold or bought or whatever. Yeah, that all sounds good. After we get done with it, you might informally take a copy to the judge and, we're not looking for his stamp of approval. He couldn't possibly do that, but just let him know that we did try to do something and here's what it is.
That is a good idea. Thank you. Well, if all these are the changes, if there's no other additional ones, then I think we just need a motion and a second to adopt the revisions to the rules governing the Board of Adjustment.
I'd make a motion.
I'll second.
Peterson, Telejohn. Further discussion, folks? Thank you for your inputs and ideas. This is great and should serve the county well for another couple of decades, likely. All in favor should now vote aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed should vote nay. That's a unanimous decision to adopt these revised rules. Good. And quite honestly, Heather or Ellen, I suppose, Ellen, you're very busy trying to clear your desk and all that, but if you chose to send a copy to Stevens Point, the clue, there are probably other counties that could use some guidance on stuff like this.
I will try to get that done.
Thank you.
Once I'll let them know.
Shall we talk about next meeting?
Yes, that would be good. As you see on your agenda, the meeting date is Thursday, August 24th. As I mentioned earlier in this meeting, we have a busy agenda. There's 4 items, but a couple of them are 3 of them are multiple applications associated with them. The ward request in Somerset that you had delayed action on will be back on this. Will be on this agenda, but I did want to suggest to the board, or maybe ask if you would be interested. We have one item on here where there are 3 after-the-fact conditional use permit requests and 4 after-the-fact variances applications that we feel a site visit would be very useful. And we could arrange for that, but we would just have to structure the meeting accordingly so that we plan for a break to have the board transported out to the property in Troy. And
Probably have 4 hearings and then a break and go on the site visit and probably stop for lunch on the way back or the way out. Makes more sense than sending for food to be brought back in here.
that's actually what we were thinking. That might make sense. We haven't totally thought it through, but yes, exactly. And again, this is a situation where it's a property that improvements that went way beyond what was allowed under a land use permit were constructed, and it would be really useful to see this one for the board. Even though we have good drawings before and after, a very detailed as-built and photographs, still to get a real sense of this one, to actually get on site and look at it with your own eyes, I think would be very useful.
Okay, I don't take your comments as trying to influence us. You're just trying to tell us what
That's correct.
we're gonna see. Yeah, well, let's plan on it. Anything else? I suppose we're gonna have a huge pile of homework to do with the next meeting.
Yeah, they'll,
Is there a reason to think we might need to schedule 2 days?
you know, it could be a lengthy day if we do it in one, depending on how many questions and how much deliberation you would engage in on a couple of these items especially.
Also, it's going to be really important to have your legal counsel present during this situation, both of these.
All right, I'm putting it down for both days.
There'll be probably quite a few other lawyers in the room. So,
Oh, no. Plus about lawyers, huh? Well,
and I didn't mean the one on the board. Just a good idea to make sure that you have your calendar free for that and schedule
Are you
it.
gonna be here as an observer?
If I'm bored. No promises, because I would not be allowed to speak. I don't have any reason to other than as a general citizen, and I'm sure that wouldn't be,
Well, it probably wouldn't be
Appropriate,
We
no.
Probably don't have knowledge that we could allow to enter into the record, I guess. Maybe it would.
yeah. it's
I would
probably
also
best.
say for the record, we've certainly enjoyed your expertise and in working with you, and you'll be missed.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm definitely sad to see it go. Many years when I worked together.
Yep, since the very beginning. I believe you were on the Plan Commission when I did my very first project, the Town of Hudson Comp Plan.
Oh, that was your first one?
Very first project for St. Croix County, yeah.
Yeah, I did 8 years on that plan commission, 6 of them, I guess I was the secretary.
Yeah,
And then I first got on the board in 90, and I think you started working here in 88.
yes, I did, yep.
Yeah, thank Bernard Kenny for getting me on the board. But what, I guess it must have been, I think sometime in 90, we started working on the new building.
We started almost immediately because the board, I was hired and my direct supervisor left in about 6 months. And then they did fill the position with someone who didn't work out and was let go. So I was acting director of the little mini, it was a much smaller department than 4 people, and had not been there a whole year. And then I also, we had already hired the first firm that did the site assessments and adjacencies and estimated size, all those kind of work. I managed all that without never having done anything like that before. And then just kept going with it and was the secretary, support, staff person, everything, all the above. And you were chairman of that building committee. And so you and I worked together. That was the first big project that I did.
During the 90 term.
Yes, it was, because we opened the building we started with that, and if you might recall, we went through, once they got done with the assessment of how much square footage and all that kind of thing, then they switched architectural firms. That was a big deal. And then, but in between that, we went through about 10 different scenarios of how not to build on this property, as led by, if you recall, a Mr. Brown. Yeah, from an underground layers, subterranean government center was proposed that we had to refute. Yes, you're remembering that. You don't? Oh my gosh, I do, because I had to prepare every staff report with all the pros and cons of every single idea that man came up with, and it was pure hell. I mean, when he got to the subterranean idea, we just almost threw up our hands and gave up, but we didn't. We kept fighting. So, yeah, we moved in here in 2003. Yeah, I know, or 1993, excuse me, which was very early. You know, it only took from the time I started, and about 4 years. It was pretty quick, yes. And then when I'm thinking of 2000, then shortly after that, I was sitting at my desk. I remember thinking, geez, it's nice not to be so busy. And I got a phone call from a gentleman who said, hey, I want you to talk to some people named Syme. They want to give the county a park. And they had a current park, and I called up county board members and was told, don't even bother. They'll never agree to it. No, this county won't spend any money. Don't even bother. And I decided, yeah, I'm going to bother. I don't care what. I had 2 county board members. The county board member that represented the area was the first. She voted yes in the end, and so did the other ones, but they told me to give it, just don't even bother. We're not going to build that park. So we built that park, and that took the whole late 90s. That was the next humongous thing. And throw in the middle of that, we did the 1990 redistricting, and my boss at that time said, well, the last time I did redistricting, I got fired after it was done because it was so controversial. So I'm not going to have anything to do with it. You do it. You're young. You can start over. I'm not making that up. That's what he told me. Yep. So I did the first 1990 redistricting. Well, it's for 1992 is when you do it. But I did that redistricting, and that was all paper and colored pencils and going out and meeting with people. And it was the old-fashioned way. And then, so I've been through 5 redistrictings because I just kept going every single time. So that's also another little feather in my cap, I guess I would say. So, yeah. And then one thing led to another, that whole battle to actually first buy the property, then build it. And that was a battle, too, to get the money because the county board did not want to give us any money. So for the government, for now, they did for this. But if you recall, this building, just to put it in perspective, was built for $14 million. And they argued and argued over, well, it was actually built for $12 million. Crept up to 14, but when the original architectural firm said it was going to cost about 14, they had to get a different firm because they wanted a cheaper price. Yes, they want, and then it ended up costing the same in the long run anyway. And then when it came to building a new park, they were like, no. And in the end, we built that whole park for about $500,000 is all, and bought it and everything because we bought more land and then sold it again, so that we got just enough to put the driveway in. So I have stories upon stories.
I'll look forward to your book. I hope it doesn't.
Yeah, no. And I would like to say not just, no. I would like to say that I have been coming to Board of Adjustment for a very long time, a lot longer than I've been director, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed everything I've done for the county. I've written ordinances, rewrote. I was just thinking about that. I think I was involved in rewriting every single land use ordinance we have, plus the parks ordinance, and plus I've rewritten the solid waste and recycling ordinance, and so I've been involved in every single one of those at least once, if not twice, and did the first 2 comprehensive revisions since I've been director. Before that, we bring that up, and they'd back off, afraid of how controversial it would be. Bring it up, back off. Bring it up, back off. No board members would tackle it. And then we finally, when I became director, we did it twice. And I think it was the right thing to do. I've always thought that. So I guess.
And then you've made the careers of a lot of people.
Yes.
We've cycled through here any number of zoning technicians and water quality came here because it was a great place with a fast-growing county and a variety of challenges. It's a great place to learn
Yes,
the profession. And
yes.
we moved on to responsible positions elsewhere where life was easier and maybe the pay was even higher. But
Yes.
they weren't in the frying pan quite so much.
And I was the foolish one that kept staying. But I don't regret it. It's been a lot of fun. So, and I have seen a lot of different people on this board. I've seen members that had a hard time keeping their eyes open. I've seen that on both boards. But I have to say that overall, it has been a really fun, challenging, exciting, and sometimes painful. But the gentleman today that decided to blame me for things that were voted on by the full board, that's fine. I'm proud that we were able to do the things we did, and the board made all of the final decisions, and you guys make the final decisions. We just try to give you the best information possible to make informed decisions. So I hope I've done good. Thank you.
I think you have. Thank you. Thanks for summarizing.
I'm just going to mention that Ellen's not the only one we're having leave the end of next week. The young gentleman that assisted on the Gary Zappa report, Reed Junko, on our staff, has accepted another position, and the 4th will be his last day too. And he's been exceptional for the amount of time we've had him, and just grateful for his work, and wish I could have him longer. But it's a unique opportunity with better wage and all. So we wish him well.
Another good example of someone whose career has taken a after working for us. So a big jump, a good jump. That constant turnover we've experienced for about the last, well, at least 6 years, I will not miss. I think we all knew it was coming. Brett Boudreau from our department and I have talked many times about back in about 2010 when they started predicting things regarding the baby boomers and all the retirements. You knew it was coming, you just didn't know how rough it was going to be to experience it and how it was going to change just about everything. Yeah. So.
I have one rule for the staff I supervise. They can't leave before I do, but they don't seem to be listening to that one.
Well, we just applaud their success and wish them well. And then we're into finding the next new hire, and making the best decision we can with that. I used to manage lawyers and legal assistants and people like that, and I went to lots of seminars on leadership and hiring people. And the old hands often said, if you made 50% of your hiring decisions correctly, you were doing well. It's very hard to know what people are going to be like when you really get them on board, you know. But we did the best we can.
That's about right. I think I would agree. So thank you, gentlemen, and the best of luck to you. I really mean that. Yeah. You're all retired, but you're sitting here, so you should be applauded. You really should.
Well, it shows 11:06 on the clock, so I'm going to declare us adjourned.